All right, so let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Before we begin, let me give you a quick introduction to Plutus, the Finance Club. So, Plutus is a student led initiative committed to making financial literacy simple, accessible, and relevant for young people. We run interactive sessions that cover everything from budgeting and saving to investing and understanding the economy, all through the lens of a student. Our goal is simple: to help you take control of your finances early and to empower our generation to make smart money decisions. Let's build a future where every student is financially confident. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today, someone who brings both experience and relatability to the topic of budgeting. Joining us is Rohan Khanna, a global excellence scholar at the University of Warwick. He's studying law. He's also a future trainee solicitor at White and Case, one of the world's leading law firms. His journey from school to a full fee scholarship in the UK while managing finances along the way is inspiring and deeply relevant in today's discussion. So get ready to hear firsthand from how disciplined money habits can truly open doors. Over to you, Mr. Khanna.
Great. Firstly, thank you so much, Marian and Plutus, for inviting me to talk to you guys today. I think this is a lovely initiative, and I'm happy to share my insights. So, if we can start with presenting the next slide, we can, begin. Great. So, let's start by talking about why budgeting matters, and let's also start by understanding what the idea of budgeting is. So, I think the first important principle that we should all understand here is that budgets are not objective, right? Everyone's circumstances are fundamentally different, which means everyone's budgets are going to be fundamentally different. And the difference in budgets will obviously depend and vary given a number of different circumstances. So, say the amount of support predominantly you receive from whoever's taking care of you. So, say your parents or someone else that you're relying on while you're a student. Secondly, if you have a part-time job, if you have a side hustle or some kind of income stream, that will influence your hustle or your budget as well. Or, for example, like me, if you're if you were on on a scholarship or a bursary or a grant, that will also influence your spending power and your budget. And I think it's very important to learn right out of the gate what your unique and personal circumstances are while you frame and make a budget or when you plan for a month of expenses. And I think that will deeply influence how you will then allocate different kinds of funds or different kinds of money towards certain areas of your monthly spending. Budgeting matters because it provides certainty and it provides objectivity in the way you will carry out your expenses for every month, right? And the second important part about budgeting is that it ensures and it builds discipline. I think as students, you're not only learning the kind of the courses you're studying, but you're also learning to live independently, whether that's overseas or out of town. You're trying to develop critical life skills, and I think what budgeting will do is sort of enable that or foster that discipline within your life. And I think that's really, really important. I think the last thing budgeting allows you to do is also basically stretch your money. As a student, I can speak to the fact that being able to make your money last is a very, very important and critical skill. Um, it will come in handy for a number of different reasons. Firstly, it will ensure that if you're, say, relying on your parents for support, it will ensure that you don't have to keep requiring their support as frequently as you would normally expect if your money doesn't last. And I think what it also does is it helps you cover for emergencies. So say in times where you find yourself needing some money for some unforeseen expenditure or due to some unforeseen circumstances, making your money last would be very important. And we'll speak about debt in a minute, but I think it also helps you, as the slide suggests, avoiding debt. So this is why budgeting matters. And I think the really important takeaway from this is that you need to understand that your budget will be dependent on your own unique and special circumstances. And I think being able to sort of objectively view budgeting in that sense um, is not the right way of approaching it. It's always going to be subjective. Cool. If we can move to the next slide, we'll talk about budget plans. Yeah. So I think the most simple way that most students tend to budget is by the month. So you sort of try to charter your expenditure every month and see what kind of needs will arise and what kind of things are happening. Some months are necessarily going to be more expensive than other months. So for me, particularly, my holiday periods were more expensive because I would spend time traveling. I would spend time going out with friends. I would spend time doing other activities. like playing sports or going on retreats and stuff like that. So that allowed me to sort of plan beforehand that I needed to save either save money or sort of divert or just allocate more money towards recreational activities. And other times, for example, you will tend to have less outflow. So you'd find that during your exam season, when you're not necessarily going out that much, when you're not necessarily meeting friends that much, and you're spending more time at home studying or revising, you will automatically find that your budget or your spending will decrease in that month. So it's really important. That's why to look at months in their own rights and what kind of what the relative importance is given your degree or given whatever pursuit you're doing. The second thing about budgeting is how you go about making that monthly budget. Now, given the advancements in tech and AI, there are a number of tools and softwares that one can use. I can only speak from my personal experience, but when I was overseas, I had three bank accounts. I had one traditional bank account that I used that my parents would send money into for me, and I would sort of use that as my main bank account. But for budgeting and for spending and tracking my insights, I had two different kinds of accounts. Now, this is relevant to people overseas. So if anyone's planning on going to the UK, I opened up what's called a Starling bank account and a Revolut, which are two very I think which are two digital banks which are very state of the art and very modern and sort of advanced in the sense that they can help you track your monthly expenses in a way that it breaks down what kind of areas you're spending in. So it is intelligent enough to discern what kind of what kind of sources you're spending at. So, for example, it would give me a monthly breakdown of how much money I was spending on social activities. It was giving me a monthly breakdown on how much money was going towards my necessities. So, say my rent, my living and my eating, my clothing, and all those other necessary things that you spend every month on. And also, it was telling me how much I was being able to save, and also projecting how much I could potentially save if I made certain changes within my habits and my spending lifestyle. So smart apps like and banks like these would be very, very important in the way you sort of build a plan to budget. I think the second thing what people tended to do if they were very serious about budgeting was trying to draw up a plan on Excel. If you're proficient with Excel or aware of that, it's just a Microsoft app that allows you to sort of basically make a budget or basically make any kind of financial forecast or plan. And I think a personal budget is a very uh, predominantly used tool within Excel. So you could obviously try to allocate certain kinds of funds, certain kinds of your allowance, whatever that may be, um, towards different activities at the start of the month. Now, a very important part about budgeting this way is ensuring that you're disciplined. I touched upon this slightly earlier, but I think being able to make a budget is only contingent on you following that budget, which means that financial discipline is supposed to be there. And obviously, you don't have to, there will be times where you will detract or slightly move away from the budget. But I think largely and generally sticking to that budget is also very important because there's no point budgeting if you're not going to have that discipline. So my only advice would be realistic and be true to yourself. See how much you want to allocate where, and and actually stick to that. So give yourself a realistic goal. It's the same thing with studying. It's the same thing with a project. It's the same thing with an internship. You will always have to set realistic goals for yourself. Okay, if we can have the next slide, that'll be lovely. A very, very integral aspect of budgeting, as I touched upon a little earlier, are needs and wants. So there's no fixed formula, but I think the general rule of thumb is you need to first account for your needs. Um, Whatever money you have aside from your needs will probably dictate your lifestyle. So let's take a step back actually. Let's first begin by defining what our needs are. If you're overseas, there's a good chance you will have to pay rent for the accommodation that you're living in. Whether you choose to cover that yourself, whether you choose to cover that through your family, that's up to you. That will influence your budget, as I said in my first slide. But that is one of the most integral needs: your food, your clothing, and if you choose to go to the gym, fitness, healthcare, those are the sort of things that would fall within your needs. Now you will always build your budget around your needs. So if your needs are very essential, and if you have, say, hobbies or things that are very, very crucial to you that are expensive, then automatically whatever you've allocated for the other will have to dwindle or will shrink or subtract. So it's important to build your needs, build your budget around your needs, and everything around that will become your wants. I think it's really also important to understand and gauge whether your wants, how paramount your wants are, and whether they can be deferred to the next month. So, for example, if you're really craving those pair of shoes or sneakers that you really wanted to buy, and you have money set aside, you could probably buy them this month and see where that leaves you. But if you could also, if you think about it, you could perhaps say have the same pattern of budgeting and follow that next month and have more money, so you can comfortably buy that and say save money instead of going right towards the end of your allowance. So it's important to understand that and saving as a student really opens up your ability to acquire your wants. But the critical idea that I would give everyone is don't be in a position or try not to be in a position where your needs have been compromised. So the biggest piece of advice I would give is don't let your wants prioritize your needs, and don't let, like, for example, don't find yourself in a position where you're, say, eating less or not going to the gym enough or not playing sport if it's essential to you, because you have some wants, for example, going out with your friends or going for parties or going for concerts and other recreational things, which I'm sure a lot of people will do when they go overseas. Again, I will go back to this idea time and again. It goes by circumstance to circumstance. Some people will be able to find achieving both needs and wants very comfortably. Some people will not. It's just how your unique circumstances play out. And I think that's really important to always keep in the back of your mind when you talk about budgeting and when you talk about saving and spending. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. So as I said before, anticipate your unexpected costs. You will always understand that, as I said, certain months will be more expensive than other months when you're at university. Some months you will find that you will have to buy books, you will have to buy courses, you may have to even enroll in extra classes, which may have an additional hidden cost assigned to it. Sometimes when you're on away on internship, which I think most of you people will find yourself at while still at university, you will have to travel. Sometimes you'll have to travel within, if you're safe. So I was in Warwick, right, and I had to go to London for my internship, and I was away in London for 3 months, and automatically your costs go up, which means London is more expensive because your groceries are more expensive there, your travel is more expensive there relative to where I was living. So that was how I had to anticipate unexpected costs and sort of understand my budget accordingly when I was spending those 3 months on internship in London. That's just an example I'm giving you. Sometimes you will have um, different situations where you will need to anticipate unexpected costs, and always have some money set aside. Emergency fund, as the slide suggests, is a really good way of ensuring that. Um, and I think the only way you can build an emergency fund is by ensuring you don't live paycheck to paycheck, in the sense that you don't exhaust your budget at the end of every month. So I think that's a really important way to look at anticipated costs and flexibility, right? I think if emergency does arise, reassessing your spending can help you cover necessary costs without falling into debt. As a student, debt is probably one of the biggest killers. The statistics speak for themselves. Student debt is rampant all over the globe. More often than not, this is institutional debt that people take before they go to university. That's someone's own personal circumstance and choice. One can't comment on that. But falling into debt within your everyday lifestyle. So, for example, having an overdraft which you're going over every month, which accrues interest, is just a way to kill value and kill wealth. So it's very important to understand that debt should be an absolute last resort, if that at all. So yeah, that's the only thing I would suggest. Just adjust your budget flexibly and know that you have the ability to work around within your money and your budget every month. Can we have the next slide, please? Income in college. Now, this is a really interesting sort of idea that I wanted to share with everyone. I'll speak about a personal experience, and then I'll sort of talk about it more generally. But when I was in my second year, I took on a job as a part-time tutor. Um, and I worked for this local tutoring agency about 5 to 10 minutes away from where I lived in my town in uni. And just to give you an idea, working at even 10 hours a week, which is not the standard. You're allowed to work 20 hours a week as a student in the UK. Working 10 hours a week, which is my work hours, opened up my budget and opened up my spending and made life so much easier for me and so much freer for me that it was great. So being able to find a source of income within your while you're studying really develop a sense of responsibility while you're studying, because after you're done studying you will begin working in some sort of establishment. So at that point you will be able to develop those critical life skills. And thirdly, while you're already studying, your budget will enlarge and it will expand. So I would definitely recommend, where possible, try to find part-time work. I know a lot of people that I've been friends with and family that have gone overseas or within India as well, who have used part-time work as a great way to expand their budget and achieve more financial freedom. However, and as the slide suggests, and this is a really good point, you need to plan your hours wisely. Being able to enlarge in your budget or wanting to enlarge in your budget should not still take precedence over the reason why you've gone to study, whether that's overseas or India, and those are your studies and your degree. Being able to not compromise on your studies and work hours part time is probably the best formula and the recipe for success in this situation. But there are often times of motivation where if you are finding yourself to be making good money, you will tend, or at least want to compromise in your studies. I think that is something that's definitely very, very, very avoidable, especially when you're going overseas to study, because there is an immigration requirement and a bunch of other rules and laws in place that will require you to adhere to your studies and prioritize those over your side job or your side hustle. So while it helps and while it's very important, you need to strike a balance. Can we have the next slide, please? Avoiding debt traps. Now, avoiding debt traps is crucial because, as I said earlier, there's no faster way to kill your wealth or whatever your wealth may be or your budget than debt. When you have set expenditures and you anticipate spending a certain amount of money every month, and when you anticipate to have expenses going out, having debt is just going to exacerbate that problem. And you will find that you will have to you will find that the money that you're spending on repaying your debts or owing your debts is just going to be extremely disheartening and defeating, because you will find that it's completely avoidable if you had just been more disciplined and more on track with your budget. Now, the big problem with debt is students will find it hard to meet debt, right? Because more often than not, students will not have part-time jobs or not have part-time jobs that are paying enough to be able to meet their debt obligations as well as carry on their lives, their lifestyles. So what happens then is, you will have to rely on your parents to pay your debts, which is obviously or whoever's supporting you, which is a very disheartening feeling. Secondly, and more crucially, what happens abroad is your credit score gets impacted, which means that the prospect of future borrowing and the prospect of financial independence in the future, so being able to say get a loan or any other kind of important thing in the future, will be deeply impacted if your credit score is hampered. And that's why avoiding debt traps are essential while you're a student. And the only way you do that is by ensuring that your needs and wants are clearly defined and followed. You are adhering to your budget. And even if you come into new money, even if you come into more money through your part-time job or side hustle, you're still maintaining that underlying discipline and following that same framework. So yeah, avoid debt traps at all times. If you have to go into debt due to an emergency, then have the means or have a plan to repay that as soon as possible, because most debt will come with interest and interest will accrue and pile up over time. So the longer you prolong your debts, necessary debts, you will find yourself paying more. So it's really essential to avoid debt traps at all costs. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so the final takeaways, right? So let's talk about where we started. We started by talking about how our budget is subjective. It is contingent on our circumstances. It's contingent on our unique, on our unique circumstances, on how much support we get from home, what kind of job we have, etc., etc. A big takeaway is that comparing budgets is something that I've seen students do a lot, and I would definitely recommend not do that. If your peers are spending more or less than you for a variety of reasons, that should not influence your decisions. That should not influence your spending habits, your lifestyles. You have to understand and ascertain this on the basis of your own unique circumstances, and that's why it's really important to understand that everyone's financial outlook is going to be significantly different from the others. That's a starting point. Secondly, it's really important to understand that you need to build that budget or make that budget beforehand. You can use a number of tools. You can use banks or apps that help track your spending, like I did. You can use Excel. Or you can just manually keep a tab on your notes app on your phone that just allows you to track your expenses. And the biggest thing and the most important thing is to be realistic about yourself and try to think as far and wide as possible as to what you would like, what you find yourself doing every month, and use that to sort of shape your budget. Remember, certain months are going to be more expensive than other months, so you need to be able to plan for those accordingly. And it's also really important to prioritize your needs versus your wants, which means that your needs should always take precedence and should shape your budget, and sort of basically be the framework around which your budget is constructed. Lastly, I would say that it's really important to avoid debt, and it's really essential to maybe secure part-time employment while you're working, while you're studying, so that you can enlarge and free up more money. So those are my final takeaways. I'm more than happy to entertain any questions about this or general questions about studying abroad in the UK. And thank you so much for Plutus for calling me for this. I think this is a very, very important topic that not a lot of people talk about before they go to uni. And I think it's really essential. Thank you.
All right. So, thank you so much, Mr. Khanna. That was truly insightful and a relatable session. Your experiences and practical advice have given us a much clearer view of what budgeting in college really looks like. Uh, and on behalf of the entire Plutus team, we would like to extend our deepest thanks for taking the time to share your journey with us. And to all our viewers, thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the session informative and that it gives you the tools and confidence to take control of your finances and plan your future better. We'll be back next week with another exciting webinar, so stay tuned. Until then, don't forget to check us out on our socials. Instagram is at Plutus_TFC. LinkedIn is Plutus hyphen the Finance Club, or visit us at plutus.org.in. You can register there, you can sign up there as well. That's all from us today. Goodbye and have a great day ahead.